Even though most of them are covered last week, I just thought I'll brush through them because I'll be using those terms today. So I don't want anyone to get lost. Just for the benefit of everyone, I'll go through them. Then we will go through main concepts like continuous integration, continuous delivery, and what services in AWS basically provide these. And then finally we'll go through some automation concepts, I mean automation services in AWS as well. So for the first 15 to 20 minutes, I'll try to just, I have some slides, like 15 slides. So I'll just quickly go through them. I just want to go through them before the demo because so then you'll have an idea of what's going to happen in the demo. I don't want to just jump into it, so it'll be a little confusing. So I'll go through some of the key terms, key advantages, features of all these services, and then we'll drop into the demo. The demo will be, so I'm picking one from each of these concepts, right? So Elastic Beanstalk, code commit, code build, and code pipeline. So basically how to build your own automated CI/CD pipeline in AWS just to get started. So I'll be walking you through a full demo on how you can get started and what you need to do and what you need to know. And then finally, I'll go through some like what are the pricing concerns there as well, like how much it'll cost and everything. So yeah, let's get started. So first off, what is DevOps, right? So we all know, I mean, we have a general idea, but DevOps is more than just an engineering practice. It's more than just, creating a CI/CD pipeline and just, you can't just forget about it. That's just not it, right? You can't just create a pipeline and just be like, okay, DevOps is done. So it's a little bit more than that. It's more of a culture. It's more of more engineering practices and patterns. And most importantly, it's done so that your services are provided with high velocity and better quality. So it should be a concept that's built into your entire team as a culture rather than just assigning one person to do everything. Everyone should have that capability to do DevOps. So everyone's lives will become easier. So just a quick walkthrough I'm doing here. So if you go through some of the concepts in DevOps, you will see the first one. These things were covered last week also, but I'm just going through them. So continuous integration, continuous delivery, infrastructure as code, monitoring and logging, communication and collaboration, and security. So I will go more into continuous integration and delivery, but infrastructure as code and monitoring are also bigger concepts, which is what we'll be covering in the upcoming sessions. Like the next session is on monitoring, and I think the last session is on infrastructure. So those are also very good, very important parts in DevOps. Monitoring and logging basically means you're going to monitor not just after even the pipeline is deployed. You should be able to monitor every single thing what's happening. You should be able to get results. You should be able to see what how your application is performing and get that results. So that results will give value. So that's monitoring. And infrastructure as code is basically your environment, the environment that your project is running in. It's maintaining that environment as code instead of going to the console and doing everything manually. If you maintain it as code, it makes it more easier, more manageable and scalable as well. And finally, security. Security should be a cross-cutting concern, meaning in every single stage, you have to make sure everything is secure. That means you have to give proper permissions to proper, like user granular level permissions to every single person in the project. And so that security concern should be there in all stages, basically. So if I start off with continuous integration, so what it means is it's what we basically do every day. Like as a software development team, we are creating code, we are writing code every day, and we are merging that code, we are pushing that code to a common repository or common source. And then that source might start doing some automated builds and tests based on what we have configured. But this concept of pushing everything and integrating everything to a common source and then preparing that to be pushed to your production environment or preparing that for a deployment. That's basically what continuous integration is like. It's it helps address bugs quicker, it improves software quality, and it reduces the time it takes to validate and release new software updates. So if we consider continuous integration in the context of AWS, there are three services that provide this, right? Three services that you can use to achieve continuous integration, meaning three services that allows you to push code to a certain repository, run some automated builds, run some automated tests, find what bugs are there, find what are the problems there, and then also prepare it or package it so that in continuous delivery stage, so that in the next stage you can deploy the whatever that you build basically. So one of the first services that provides this is AWS Code Commit. So this is the names kind of gives it away. So it's kind of it's a source control management system, right? It's based off of Git. So it pretty much provides all the features that Git already provides, like committing your code, pushing your code, creating branches, merging your code, and also you can create pull requests and review that, comment on the pull request. All of that is provided in Code Commit. This is a service inside AWS. So, but on top of that, it also provides encryption. Encryption in the sense like all the code that you write can be encrypted using another service with the help of another service called AWS KMS, which is key management system, key management service. Sorry. So that will provide, combined with that, this will provide, you can store your code in an encrypted way, encrypted manner. So it's more secure that way, and no one can, even if someone gets access, they can't really decrypt it. So that is also there. And then there's access control, meaning you can have different users using AWS IAM, which is another service for identity access management. So you can granularly mention, like configure who can access the code, who can push to the repo, who can pull, that kind of granular control you have using using Code Commit. Another thing, high availability and durability. So by that, it means the code that you push to Code Commit, it gets replicated across multiple regions. It gets stored basically in these buckets called Amazon S3 buckets, but it gets replicated. So even if one of the servers goes down in AWS side or for some reason, your code will still be there. So there won't be any downtime. The downtime is very, very much minimized. So there's always that high availability and durability. And finally, you can also write some scripts and notifications, meaning like if, let's say, someone pushes some code and you want a notification to your email saying someone has pushed this, or when someone makes a pull request, you want a notification. So those kind of custom webhooks or custom notifications can also be configured with AWS Code Commit. So Code Commit is just like any other source control management like GitHub or GitLab. You can push your code, you can do a lot of things, but the added advantage is it's inside AWS and you can encrypt it. You can granularly give permission to it. So that's pretty much about Code Commit. So the next tool is Code Build. Now, Code Build is it builds up, it creates environments where you can compile your source code, run tests, and produce software packages. So meaning, so let's say once you have pushed all the code, now you want to build that code and see if there's any errors, see if the tests are passing, and you want to create a package so that you can push that package to deployment basically. So this is kind of in between CI and CD because you can use it for both. You are both building the code there, as well as you can use it to give that package to the deployment side as well. So that's why it's kind of in the middle. But some of the advantages of this is that it can scale up. So if you are doing multiple builds, or if you're deploying hundreds of services at the same time, it will scale up accordingly and handle that load quite nicely. And it provides different environments for you to run your code in Windows and Linux. And even in Linux, there are multiple distributions like Ubuntu and Amazon Linux and etc. So you can choose what environment you want, and you can install pretty much anything you want in that, and then you can run, and then you can build your code. Similar to something like a Docker container or something, right? So the build And also another, so AWS specific advantage here is that you can keep this build inside a VPC. VPC is a virtual private cloud. So that will help you so that your build, whatever that you're running in the build, won't be exposed to the outside environment, outside internet, basically. So that's why we create these VPCs to kind of protect all of our network infrastructure into a common network, into a private network. So you can run these builds inside that private network as well. So no one in the internet can access that build or see what's happening. It's all in your network. So that's also possible. And finally, like code commit here also, you can encrypt the build. The artifacts that are coming out also can be encrypted with KMS, and also permissions can be given using IAM as well. So the one of the other cool things about code build is it's not just you can it's not restricted to AWS, right? So you can, if you bring in other tools like Jenkins and um, even Azure DevOps, those kind of things can also be integrated to code build, meaning whatever you build there, or if you want to do some build activity, if you want to divide and conquer, then you can send some of them to AWS side as well, and code build can take care of it. So it's not very restricted. It's not like you have to be in AWS to do it. Or you have to keep your code in code commit to use it. You can keep your code in GitHub or GitLab or anywhere, or Bitbucket. You can still bring them, and or even if you don't want to use the environments that they give, like if you don't want to use their Windows environment or Linux, you can use another environment like Jenkins and bring that here as well. So it gives that flexibility. So it's easier to use. It's easier to get started with it. You don't have to be. It's not so restricted within AWS or anything like that. So I will be going through this code commit and code build in the demo more in depth. I will show some cool features in code build as well, especially for when you're testing. It'll create nice reports, and it'll make that automation side of things very easy. So I will go through them in the demo. So do stick around for that. And finally, there's Code Artifact. Now this is a pretty new service. I think they introduced it last year around October. So well, it's a cool service because it allows you to maintain different packages. Now, obviously, in all our projects, we use a lot of open source packages. We use a lot of libraries, right? If it's Node, we use a lot of npm packages. If it's Java, we use Gradle or Maven packages. So like that. Even if it's Python, we use pip, right? So like that, we use a lot of packages nowadays. But sometimes there are issues. For example, you might need a specific version of a package for your project to work, but sometime some few months later that version got deprecated, or they deleted the version, or something like that happened, and now you don't have it. Or you wanted the library, but you have made some custom change to the library that they haven't still added yet, but you still want that change, and you want to give the change to your teammates as well, because that it's really needed for your project. But in cases like this, we usually it's hard, because then we'll have to again create another private repo or something, and then push it there, and then give it to your teammates. So to ease these problems only, this Code Artifact, they release this service. So here you can store, publish, and share software packages that you use daily in your software projects. It'll automatically fetch from other sources. So you can configure Code Artifact to different sources, to npm, to Maven, to pip, and what it'll do basically is it'll be like a middleman. So your project will always pull from Code Artifact, right? So if you type npm install, let's say Express or something, it'll pull from Code Artifact, but Code Artifact will in return, it'll pull it from npm, and then it will give it to you. It'll create a cache basically inside Code Artifact, and then only it'll give it to you. Why? Because in later, even if something happens to that version or something goes wrong, you will still have that library in your Code Artifact, so you can still use it. Plus, if you want, you can create your own Python packages or npm node packages, and you can push it directly to this Code Artifact. You don't have to pay anything to, usually we have to create a private npm account to do that. But here you don't have to, you can just push it here. And then your teammates can also pull it directly from this Code Artifact instead of having to go through that npm flow. So I wanted to show this in the demo as well, but it'll take a little time because it is a cool feature, but basically that's what it do. It's going to help a lot with managing your external dependencies. So that's also another cool feature that they recently introduced that will help with code integration, right? Okay, so those are the three services for code integration. Now I'm going to go talk a little bit about continuous delivery, code CD, CI, and CD now. So continuous delivery meaning on a high level, what it means is what now all this time we were integrating the code, we were building the code, and now what we're going to do is basically deliver it. So we are going to deploy it, right? So the process of continuous delivery means you're continuously integrating the code, and then now you're going to continuously deliver it so that it can be to your test environment or your production environment, but you're continuously adding value to your project instead of things getting stagnated, right? Not just delivery. Beyond that, you're also going to do tests. You're also going to verify your application is properly working. You can do UI tests, load test, integration tests, API reliability testing, different types of tests during this continuous delivery process, because those are important, right? Those are what verify, and those are what solidify, and those are what confirm that your product or like that version is ready to go to production, right? So those kind of automation, allowing those kind of automation will will make our lives easy as well, and that is why we follow this process as well. So the CI and CD process, and yeah, so that's just a overview. So in AWS context, there are three services. I already went through code build because it's kind of in the middle. The other two are code deploy and code pipeline, right? So I'm going to first go through code deploy. So what code deploy does is it's it's so whatever, let's say now in the code build, I created a build package. I created let's say if it's a Spring project, I created a jar file. So now I want to deploy that jar file. I will pass it on to this guy, code deploy, and he will take it and he will put it in the correct environment wherever I have configured it. Wherever I have configured it, it will go and put it there, and it'll start spin it up, and it'll get it ready for us. So that's basically on high level what code deploy is going to do. But it'll do that in many different ways. Now there are different deployment strategies. I'll show you that in a little while. So code deploy will allow you to deploy your application in different ways so that it'll suit your business logic. I'll come to that in just 2 slides. But before that, like some of the advantages of code deploy is that it fully automates your software deployment. It's so you don't have to do any manual what do you say intervention there. It'll automatically do everything, and it'll have a centralized control, so you can go and see what's happening. You can see you can have detailed reports and logs coming out of it, see what is deploying right now, what has been deployed last day, like what's the health of the current deployment. All of those informations will be there in code deploy, and it'll help minimize downtime because of that deployment strategies that I mentioned. So it gives you a platform so that you can easily take advantage of these deployment strategies, and thereby your downtime will also minimize pretty fast. And finally, it's easy to adopt because this also like code build, you can integrate it with other sources as well. You don't have to use code build. You can directly come from Jenkins, or you can come from GitHub or any other place. There's a lot of there's a list of services that it allows, but it's not restricted. It's not only AWS. You can bring your artifacts from different sources as well. So that's another cool thing for continuous delivery, right? Code deploy is used for continuous delivery. Similarly, code pipeline is also used. So I will be showing this more in the demo. So code pipeline is pretty much a backbone to all the services that I just showed you today. So that code pipeline here only you will mention, okay, where I need to get the code, from what I need to do to build it and create the package, and then what I need to do to finally deploy it and get it out to the environment. right? So all of these will be properly mentioned in code pipeline. So this will connect everything, and even again, it's not also very restrictive. You can bring stuff from other sources as well. You can bring the code from GitHub and build it in Jenkins, and then deploy to AWS using code deploy. You can deploy to some EC2 instance or something. So all of that kind of flexibility is also possible. So some of the advantages of code pipeline is that it's automating your software release process. As I said, you can quickly iterate on feedback and get new features to your users very fast. It also enables you to increase the speed and quality of your software updates, because it's going to it's going to do, you can configure it to do constant quality checks, and you can set up notifications. Now, let's say if you're doing a deployment and something goes wrong, you can easily set up email notifications or SMS notifications, anything you want to your team to quickly notify, okay, something went wrong here, you can go and check it. So those kind of functionalities are also there. And as I said before, it's easy to integrate. It integrates with a lot of different sources. You can even bring your own plugins or your custom plugins into AnyStep as well. Like you can bring your custom builds, custom servers that I mentioned. So, and the workflow is configurable, meaning you can dynamically also change the flow of the pipeline. You can reuse the same pipeline to different environments. Let's say you want to deploy to development and staging and production using the same pipeline also, you can do that. Or you can have 3 different pipelines. So it's up to you. You can decide, and you can have that flexibility. So those are the two main services that gives continuous delivery. And about the deployment strategies that I mentioned before, so this is like a matrix on what services allow this kind of these different deployment strategies, right? So all of these strategies are provided by code deploy. Code deploy will allow all of these strategies. But these other services that I mentioned in the right side, like this ECS, Lambda, and EC2, these are all different. One is a container service. The other one is the serverless function, serverless application service, and the other one is another server. EC2 is again server based, so you can deploy applications on a server, cloud server. So if I just quickly go through all these deployment strategies, this was discussed last few weeks ago, but I'll just go through it fast. So in place deployment is when you deployment is done in like each instance is stopped. The same instance is stopped, and the new version is added to it, and then it's again started up. So there's a little downtime there, but that's in place deployment, basically keeping that same instance and replacing the code inside. Then blue-green deployments is when you switch the traffic. You switch the traffic from between two identical environments. So you spin up a new environment, you push the new code to that. Let's say that is the green one and the other one is the blue. So you will slowly switch the traffic to your application to the green and see if everything is fine. And if so, then finally you will you will move all the traffic back to the second environment. So that's blue-green. And canary deployment is when you incrementally deploy. You first deploy to a small set of small subset of servers, and just see if everything works there. Then you slowly double or triple amounts, you keep increasing it, and finally you have deployed it to all your servers. That's canary. And linear is canary, but like you're linearly increasing the traffic with predefined options. So by percentage, like 10%, 20%, 30%, like that, you keep on linearly increasing the traffic to your new environment. So that's linear. And all at once means that's a very old school way to do. Like you just push all the traffic to the new environment, or you replace the environment, and you at one shot you push all the people who are coming to your application to the new environment. So these are the different types of deployments. But now Amazon ECS it's a container service. So that service will so when you're using code deploy and deploying the artifacts to Amazon ECS, you can use any of these strategies, right? It allows for all of them. Same thing goes for Lambda as well. Now Lambda is a serverless service. But for EC2, it'll only allow for this in-place deployment and blue-green. And if it's an on-premise service, that means your server is in a physical location, then only in-place deployment is possible using code deploy. So that's, I just wanted to put this here so you guys will have an idea of how what are the strategies that it allows and what services you can deploy to using code deploy. Okay, so finally, I have only this last thing about this automation. After that, I'll be going to the demo. So automation is also another key aspect. So what we've seen about CI/CD, and people think that's it, but there is more. Automation is another concept. It's another core concept. In a high level, what it means is, now in CI/CD, we are automating. We are also doing automating there as well. But what we are doing there is we are pushing the code and we are deploying it to an already existing environment, right? So that environment we haven't really automated. That environment we might have manually set it up and it's already there. But this pushing the integrating the code, doing all the tests, deploying, that part is now fully automated. But this is still kind of in a old school way, like kind of in a manual way. So if you could automate that, by automating that, what I mean is, now let's say you suddenly get a massive traffic to your application, like you had some sale and like thousands of users are coming. So if you hadn't already set up, if your server can't handle that much load, then it should be able to automatically scale up, right? It should be able to automatically, okay, now I'm getting 1,000 users. I need to automatically allow these 1,000 users to come into the application. Otherwise, the application will freeze. So to allow this to facilitate this, only this automation concept is there, and AWS provides 2 services for that. But so it's focusing on not more just it's focusing on automating this environment and supporting the infrastructure of your application, and scaling it up and scaling it down based on the different configurations. So it's 2 services. One is Elastic Beanstalk and the other one is Opswork. I'll be demoing how you can start with Beanstalk. But I'll just talk about what Opswork is as well. So Elastic Beanstalk is what it's going to do is, it's basically you already have these services called Amazon EC2 and auto scaling. So EC2, as I told, it's a server. Where you can create instances and you can publish your code and you can run it. And auto scaling is it's already there in EC2. What it'll do is what I mentioned before, like when there's too much traffic, it'll automatically scale it. But what this Elastic Beanstalk is providing on top of this is that it's combining both of them, and it's giving like a proper nice dashboard. You can even add your database services here as well, and you can manage all of them at once. And it will also give all of these deployment strategies as well that are not already there in EC2 and auto scaling. That you can do, but you have to do it manually. But here, Elastic Beanstalk will allow you to automatically do this. So again, this all at once is similar to what we already saw there. Similar to what we already saw before. Rolling means it'll split the instance into batches and deploy the batch one at a time. And rolling with additional batch means for the first batch, it'll create a new EC2 instance, and for the second batch, it'll deploy it in the already existing one. And then immutable means it'll deploy to a new instance instead of using any of the existing instances. And traffic splitting means immutable deployment, but it's going to forward the traffic to a predetermined duration, meaning it's going to push the traffic to it's going to split the traffic and push some to the new environment, some to the old. So these kind of strategies, these kind of automated ways of deploying can be achieved using Elastic Beanstalk, which cannot be done if you just use the EC2 and auto scaling. So it's just an added feature, and you have this nice monitoring dashboard as well. So furthermore bringing everything together and automating all of them in one shot. So that's Elastic Beanstalk. So if you compare that with Opswork, this is also a newer service, relatively new service. That what it does is it's going to do pretty much the same that Beanstalk does, but it takes it another step further. You can here create configurable stacks. So you can now in an application, you will have your web tier, application tier, and database tier, and like that you will have different tiers. So you can create stacks for each of these and then use configuration management software, and you can monitor your entire application lifecycle with Opswork. It's a little advanced, but it provides more features than Elastic Beanstalk, and it kind of brings everything together in terms of automation. So I think I've bored you enough with a lot of slides. I am going to do the demo now. So a little bit about the demo. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a Node.js application. I chose Node.js for no particular reason because I just use Node.js every day, so I'm comfortable with it, so I chose it. But whatever I show, except for the Node.js code, everything else that I show can be applicable to other languages like Java, .NET, Python, everything. Right, so it's that the process is pretty much the same. Only the code I'm going to show is going to be a little. It's going to be Node.js specific, and yeah, so some of the prerequisites for what I'm going to do is you need to have Node.js installed, and you need to have an AWS account with AWS CLI configured. CLI is the command line tool. You have to create an IAM user, you have to download the credentials and set it up with the AWS CLI. You can look that up in Google. There's a lot of tutorials for that, so I don't want to again show that here. It's pretty basic. You have to download it and set it up, and then you have the environment ready to basically push code and do everything, right? So yeah, so I will go to the demo. Let me. Hope you guys can see the demo. It's a pre-recorded one, but I will be guiding you through everything. I recorded it because certain steps in the demo will take a lot of time. Like when I spin up the Elastic Beanstalk, it's going to take a lot of time. So I didn't want to waste the time. I didn't want to waste anyone's time. So I wanted this session to be as informative as possible. So that's why I recorded it, but I will walk you through everything, and you will see some errors, some mistakes here and there. I kept them there because these are some things that you might also face if you get started, right? So those solutions might not be there I mean, it might not have straightforward solutions. So I kept them so that I'll explain like what's happening and why it's failing and why it's working. All of that I'll show. So I'll just play this. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to create a new empty folder, and I'm naming it as Beanstalk test. So I'm using VS Code here to do the coding. Again, that's a personal preference. You can use anything you want. I use VS Code every day, so that's why I chose VS Code. So what I'm going to do here is I'm writing simple. People who are already familiar with Node.js know about Express and NodeMon and everything. So I'm just creating a very simple Node.js application. So first thing I will do is I'm going to initialize I'm doing an npm init. So what this will do is it will just create a package JSON file. This is node specific, so it's creating basically a boilerplate JSON file that will allow me to install other libraries that I need for the.
Keshav, excuse me, we lost the screen sharing.
Oh. I saw some other screen. Okay, wait. I'll share it again. Okay, you guys can see now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, okay. What I was saying was, yeah, I'm creating a package JSON file. I created a boilerplate one. And what I'm going to do now is I named it as Beanstalk test, but it's just taking the name from the folder. So first thing I'm going to install is Express. For those who are not familiar, Express is a Node.js library that will allow you to create web applications, backend applications like APIs and all. You can easily create with Express. So I'm installing that. Just for the demo, I'm using that. And NodeMon is another service, another library that will allow you to locally start your server and just do local testing for your Node.js server. So I'm installing that here as well. And skip that a little. Okay. Then I'm installing Jest. Okay. So why I'm installing Jest here is that I didn't need to, but Jest is a testing service, it's a testing library. Sorry. So what it'll do, what it'll allow is you can write unit tests and integration tests with Jest. So why I wanted to include that in this demo is because as I said, CI/CD is not just about development. Testing is a big factor in it, and test automation is a big factor in it. So I wanted to show how you can do that in code build and code pipeline as well. So that's why I'm installing Jest here. Uh, that, yeah. Okay. So then what I'm doing here is I'm just going to create a new JS file called app.js. The name doesn't matter. So what I'm writing here is it's a very basic endpoint for using Express. I'm going to write a get endpoint that will just return hello world message, right? I didn't want to write anything complex because it's just a small demo. So what the code here is just going to create a get endpoint that will return a JSON response with one small hello world message. So if I just skip a little, yeah. But there's a small thing here that I will explain. Yeah, so here, this is the code. This is all that I've written. The .get will return the get response, and the listen will start the server basically. I put that hello world just to see that the server has started. But there, if you notice, I've written a small or condition saying process.env.port is should be or 3000. Why I did that is if you just put, usually we'll put 3000. So 3000 will start the server locally in that port 3000. But why I put that process.env.port is because when I'm deploying this to Elastic Beanstalk, that will by default have a port already set on its environment. You can configure that later, but in order to access that port, you have to use this environment variable. So it'll push that port value into your node application in that environment variable. So that's why I've done that there. If that environment variable is set, use that port. Otherwise, just use 3000 for local testing purposes. That port num value is again configurable later on in Beanstalk, but I wrote that code here so that it can take that port value from the Beanstalk environment. So that's why I did that there. Then I'm writing in the package JSON, I'm writing the start script basically, npm start. Why I'm doing that is because Beanstalk will try to find now if it's a node environment, if it's a node application, it will try to find this start command. So then only it will know, okay, I have to run this to start the application, right? To start the server. So it will try to first find, by default, it will try to find this. Again, these are also configurable, but I kept it all in the default. So by default, it'll try to find that start script. So that's why I said start should be node app.js. So it'll start the server in the Beanstalk as well as locally. And the test command, I just wrote it as just. So what it'll do is it'll run the test basically, run the unit test. I didn't write the test yet. Here, I just started the server locally to just see if it works, and it seems to be working fine. And since it's a get endpoint, I accessed it in my browser, and it shows welcome to the home page. So my ultimate goal here is to get this same response after I have deployed it to Beanstalk. So Beanstalk will deploy it and give me a fully hosted URL. And in that URL, if this comes, that means it's working properly fine, right? So that's my ultimate goal here. So yeah, I'm stopping the server again. What I'm going to do next is I'm creating the test file. Again, this is a very basic test file. I didn't write anything complex there. What it does is it's just going to do it'll just test if 1 is equal to 1. That is a pretty straightforward test. But people who know how to write tests know that you can write unit tests with just. So here, what it does is it's just going to expect 1 to be 1. So it'll always be true anyways. So I just wrote that just to show you how to deploy tests in the code pipeline, which I will show later on in the demo. Here I'm just running it locally to see if it works, and it works fine. So okay, now I'm creating the config file. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is I'm creating this build spec YAML file. Okay, so this YAML file is used for code build. Now, when you start the code build, you have to tell certain instructions for it to run, right? It doesn't know where your project is, where your code is. It doesn't know what to do, right? So in this YAML file only, you're going to mention, okay, you go here, find the code here, and then you run the test here, and then just tell me what's the results for the test, right? So that configuration I'm going to do in this YAML file. I put .dev.yaml, that's not really needed, but I wanted to put it, I wanted to show like that's how you can differentiate between environments. Like in my project, we have buildspec.dev, buildspec.prod, like that we have different environments. So I just wanted to show that there. So if I quickly run through the code here, what I have written here is I'm saying the Node.js environment should be 12. And I'm just echoing saying echo is just like a print command, like console log, right? Just to see what the status is. Basically, I'm first installing all the dependencies using npm install. And then in the build stage, I'm doing a npm test. So there are phases in this in code build. That's what I mentioned as install and build. So in the install stage, you usually mention all your install commands. You might install some other external libraries or anything. You can put that there. All the commands you need to run to install. And then in the build stage, you can either do the testing, or you can package your application and then get it ready for exporting as well. And finally, in that cache block, what I have written is I'm just saying to cache the node modules. So even if you run the build the second time, the same modules will still be there. So it'll be a little bit faster. You don't have to again install all the modules from the beginning. It'll only install if you added some new libraries, it'll install it. Otherwise, it'll keep the same cache there just to increase the performance of the build. So that's what this build file is. I will show like how you can connect this to the code build and all when we go to the AWS site. So first I'm just writing all the code. So when we push it, you'll understand what's happening. I'm also writing a git ignore so that it'll ignore the node modules, because I don't really need that in the when I'm running the application. And I'm adding a readme just so that we can see it in the code commit side. So if okay. So when after that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to AWS now, the AWS console. This is my personal account. So first thing is to push, I'm going to use code commit here. You can use GitHub or GitLab or anything, but I'm using code commit to push the code. I'm pushing the code to to code commit itself. So I search for code commit. This is how it'll look. And I'm creating a repository here. I just gave it the name Beanstalk test. And I'm just creating it. Yeah. So then it will give me a URL to clone the repository, right? That's what I just showed you. That HTTPS URL, you can see there, the git clone. That is the HTTPS repository. So you can use that to clone your repo. Yeah, you need to have Git and Git installed in your PC, so then only you can use the Git commands. So here what I'm doing is I'm initializing an empty repository with Git in it. Then I'm going to like I'm initializing a local repository. I'm just going through all the files that I've written. I'm doing an initial commit, and then basically I'm just adding everything and doing a commit. Yeah. After that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect my local repo with the code commit repo repository that I just created. So the command for that is git remote add origin, and I'm just going to copy that and paste it. So it has added the origin here. I'm checking that with git remote v. Here it shows the origin is git code commit API Southeast one beanstalk test. So that's my repo that I just created in code commit. So the next step, logical step, is to push the code, right? So I'm just going to push it. So when you push the code, usually in all Git management things, it will ask for a username password. So I gave the username password here, but it failed. Why? Because I gave the username password for my AWS account, and that won't work. What you need to do instead is you have to go to IAM, right? IAM is another service, identity access management. There you have to create another user, or it can be your existing user or another user. You have to go inside that user, and there'll be a section there where you can create Git credentials, right? So that will give exclusive Git credential access to code commit. So otherwise you cannot push or pull code to code commit. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to my user in IAM, and I'm generating credentials for myself. Git credentials for AWS code commit, and then I'm just going to download it. So after downloading it, again, when you do the same push, it's again going to ask the same credentials again. So that's what's happening here. I'm just trying to push it again. And this time I'm going to add the credentials that I just generated, right? So then it'll work fine. Yes, as you can see, it got pushed now. So just to verify it, I went to the code commit repo just to see if the code has come. And yeah, everything I have written is all here now. So that means first step is done. I have written my code. I have pushed it to my repository, right? So the next step is to next step, I'm going to create the Elastic Beanstalk instance, basically, or the environment. So here you can choose whether it's a web server or a worker environment. I'm going to create a web server because I'm going to run an API, right? I'm going to run a Node.js API. But a worker environment means you can run, as it says, you can run long-running workloads, or scheduled tasks means you can use that environment. So I'm using a web server, and then I'm going to type in an application name. This name will again be used when we create the pipeline, but it can be anything. And I'm giving it the tag also. Tags usually are used to track your cost, like when the bill comes, it comes with the tag, so it's easy to see the where your cost has been taken. Another thing here is the environment name. Environment name also, it auto-generated in my name. I'm just keeping it like that, but you can change it as well. But that environment name is again referenced in the code pipeline. I will show that later. And there's a domain also. Now here also I left it blank, so it is going to generate auto-generated URL for me. If you want a custom URL, you can type it there and check the availability to see if that's available, and you can use that as well. Here I'm choosing that I'm going to run a Node.js environment, and I'm choosing Node 14. So it's fine. And for the application code, I'm just selecting the sample code. What it means is it's the code for the configuration, basically. So that's why I said that npm start and all should be there. The process port should be there. So in this sample thing, it will use these commands to start it. But you can, again, as I said, you can change it, or you can customize it if you want. That there are options for that as well. But for now, I'm just creating the sample application. So yeah, so I'm going to create it. So I'm going to let it create here. So this will take a little bit of time. So while it's creating, what I'm going to do is I'm going to code build. to create a build environment. So in code build, why we need this build is to run our test, basically the test that I created, the jest file. So to run that test to see the results only, I'm creating this code build project. So the build here, I'm again going to give it a name, application test, and then I'm giving it a key and a value. Here I'm going to choose the source. So as you can see, there are multiple sources. You can connect it to GitHub, Bitbucket, Enterprise, Code Commit, or directly from S3. So I'm going to use Code Commit because I pushed my code to Code Commit. And I'm going to say, I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm not choosing a branch here. I'm not saying it's going to come from master, because that I will do in the pipeline. I'm not doing it here because the pipeline will tell, okay, pipeline will pull the code from a particular branch and give it to this guy. So here, if you just leave it empty, whatever the code that will come to the build, it'll run it. If you're using the build for a pipeline, it's better to leave that empty. Otherwise, you can configure the branch. Here only, I'm going to choose the image that I'm going to run. I usually run Linux images in our project. So that's why I chose Linux. But according to your need, you can choose what you want. And this version also, I chose the 2.0 x86. That's the version we usually use. There are different advantages and disadvantages. You can look it up to see which version you actually want, which environment you want. Here it will create a IAM role, basically a permission. Here only the permissions can be configured. So it's going to create a IAM role for that. It'll automatically create it, so we don't have to do anything there. And this is the important part, the build spec file. So what I'm going to do here is, so as I told, I created a build spec file, right? So I'm going to tell this code build to go to this particular folder, config folder, and use this particular YAML file. Here, there's another option to insert build commands. So you can directly add those commands that I wrote in the YAML file here itself. But it's not good practice, because if you have a lot of commands to write, it's always better to keep it as code and keep it in your repository itself, so you can easily manage it rather than coming here every time and doing a change. And that's very cumbersome. So that's why we mentioned the path to the build spec file, to the location of the build spec file in our repository. So that's what I've done here. I'm saying it'll be in this location. You can pull the build spec from there. So then these things are all boilerplate. You don't have to worry. It's for the artifacts and the logs. You can keep it as default. It's going to push the logs to CloudWatch. It's another service for monitoring, where it'll show what's happening right now in when the build is running. It'll push the logs to that particular service, so we can see what's happening inside the build. So now I'm just going to wait for this pipeline, sorry, the Beanstalk environment to spin up. It's going to take a little time. So yeah, so I actually paused the video and played it here. I mean, I waited for a little here. So after it spins up, this is how it will look. It will say the environment is ready, and you can see there's a URL there, beanstalk app-env.eba, and that huge URL. So that is the auto-generated URL that it generated for me. At the end of this, my application will be deployed to that particular URL, right? So here it's showing the health, and it's showing all the events that has done so far. Like it has started the instance, it has started the environment, and the health is all okay. So it's showing this in this dashboard. You can pretty much see everything. And so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create the code pipeline. So I'm going to code pipeline service, and I'm creating the pipeline. So in the pipeline, what we are going to do, I'm giving it a name. It's pretty straightforward. Sorry. And then I'm giving it a role name. That is also, again, it'll auto-generate it, so you don't have to worry too much. This encryption and everything, I'm keeping it default because I don't really want to encrypt it right now, but you can if you want to. And here only I'm going to choose the source. So source, again, it's going to be code commit, right? So that's where I push the code. So I'll choose code commit here. There are other options here, GitHub, Enterprise, Bitbucket, and everything. So for me, I'm just going to use code commit. But here I will mention the repository name and the branch name. because I want to pull the code from master. I only had a master branch there. I didn't create any other branches. But if you have different branches for different environments, you can mention that here and then it will pull it accordingly. And these change detection and output format, you can leave that as default. That's basically how it's going to detect there's a new change in the code and how it will output the artifact to the in the pipeline. So those are all default boilerplate things, so you can leave it like that. So when you create a pipeline, there's another thing. You have to have a source stage, but there's another build stage and deploy stage. You can either have one of them or both of them, but you need to have at least one of them. Otherwise, you can't create a pipeline at all. There should be either a build stage or a deploy stage, or you can have both. Here, I'm going to have both. In the build stage, I'll be doing the testing, and in the deploy stage, I'll be basically doing the deployment. So in the build stage, I'm choosing the build code build that I just created, and I'm just clicking next. Nothing else to configure there. And then I'm gonna choose the beanstalk now. Here only the deployment stage come. So you can see the code deploy, ops work, everything is here. ECS, S3. So these are all places you can deploy to. I'm gonna use Elastic Beanstalk. So then because that's what I just configured. So application name. I had two Beanstalk apps, so I'm just going to choose the one I just created. And for that, the environment name, it'll automatically suggest it. So I just chose the same environment name. Here you can finally it'll show a summary of everything. So you can just review what happened. And then you can just create the pipeline. So once you create the pipeline at the first shot itself, it'll pull the code and it'll start to run the pipeline, right? This is how the pipeline will look. You can see the source, the build, and the deploy. You can see all the stages. In each stage, you can add more actions as well. I've only added one action here, but you can see it has failed. So I didn't also realize why it failed. But the reason here was it was just a very momentary fail. I restarted the pipeline and it worked fine. Why? Because when it created the pipeline, it has to create these permissions and the IAM roles that I mentioned. But that will take a little time to provision, right? Even internally within AWS, it takes a little time. So before if everything was ready, the pipeline started and it failed. So when I restarted the pipeline, it worked fine. So these kind of things can happen sometimes. So it's very rare, but it happened while I was recording for some reason. So then if I just restarted it in the next minute and it worked fine, I didn't do any change. So I restarted that's how when you click the release change, you can restart the pipeline. So I'm restarting it. And then what it's doing here is pulling the code and it's passing that code to code build, right? So that is what's happening here. Yeah. So in the code build, what it's going to do now is it's going to spin up that Linux environment. It's going to install the required dependencies, and it's going to run the test because in the build spec file, I told to run the test, right? So it's going to run the test. I'll just skip to what it'll look at the end. So this is how the log will look. It has logged everything. It's installing dependencies. So those are the echoes that I put there, and then it has installed the dependencies. It has done everything, and then finally, if you go to the end of it, you'll see that the test has also passed because it has run the gest command and it has run the test successfully. So then if I go back to my pipeline, you will see again it has failed. Why? Because now the build has passed, but the pipeline has failed. This was because now when I set the Elastic Beanstalk, there should have been another configuration there, but it was missed. It's only there for code commit. It won't happen if you use GitHub. You have to edit the pipeline here manually and choose this whether it's a source artifact or a build artifact. By default, it goes to build. You have to set it to source. What it means is source artifact means whatever the source that the code pipeline takes, it will give it to this code. It will give it to Elastic Beanstalk and it will use it. So that's what we want. But it thought the code will already be there in Elastic Beanstalk. I didn't do that. So that's why it failed. So I had to just switch it to source. And then when I started the pipeline, after a few minutes, it started working fine. It was in progress. So if I check the Elastic Beanstalk, you will see there it'll show that the server has started and it's running, and you can see the environment is it'll show the environment is getting updated right now. See, as at the top, you can see Elastic Bean is updating your environment, deploying new version to instance. That means the application is properly getting deployed now. So in a few minutes, it finishes, and what I did was I just opened that URL that it auto-generated for me, right? The Beanstalk app. Here it shows the environment is fully successfully updated, and when I open it, it shows. So it works basically. So my ultimate goal here is that I wanted the local application that I just developed to be to be automatically deployed, right? So I have created Beanstalk here. I have created my pipeline. I have created the code build. I've automated the testing, automated the integration, automated the delivery, and I've also automated my environment as well. Because I didn't actually go and create these EC2 instances or any of these by myself. Beanstalk did it, did everything, created this URL, hosted it, everything it did for me. And it simply took my application, put it there, and it's working completely fine here. So it's pretty cool, it's pretty easy, and that's how it'll work. So that's the main demo, but I wanted to show a little bit more as well. A little, so I'll quickly run through. We are running out of time as well, so I'll quickly run through the other things you can do here. So in the Beanstalk dashboard, you can see all the health of your application, the how like what's the status, what's happening right now, everything you can see. And the main thing I want to show here is there's an okay. So what I'm doing here now is I'm going to do a small change in the code. I'm doing its version 2 and it's me, KK. So I am again adding that to GitHub. I'm committing it and I am going to push it. I just wanted to show you that continuous flow there, the automation basically. So I'm git push. As soon as I do this git push origin master, meaning when I'm pushing it to my code commit, if I go to my code pipeline, I'm just showing that the code has come here. But if I just go to my code pipeline, yeah, the pipeline is already in progress, meaning it has already pulled the code. It has realized there's a new change. It pulled the code and it has started running the build as well. So that shows that instantly when you do a change, the pipeline will start, and in a few minutes, the Beanstalk environment is updated as well. The version 2 is there. But right now it shows the health is degraded. That will happen because since I just did the deployment, it thinks like something went wrong, right? But actually I know that it's deployed. So in a few seconds, it will come back to health, will come back to okay. So that's normal because see, in a few seconds it came back because it thinks something went wrong, but in actuality, it's just that it's a new deployment and the traffic is shifting. So that's why it says that. That is fine. So that shows that when you do a change, that this shows that the entire pipeline and the automation is properly built here. Everything is working fine, and and uh, even if you do a change, everything just shows pretty much instantaneously, right? So the extra thing I wanted to show is I wanted to show now when you do tests, you can get reports for those tests as well. So for that, in Jest, you have this thing called JUnit. So I'm installing that here. I don't want to go too deep into this, but I did some configurations here for the JUnit, so that it'll create the report. This is useful for usually for QA and people who do a lot of test automation. So here you can config. I'm doing again. I'm adding a small block here, but this block will. Sorry, yeah. So what this block will do is let me show. Yeah. So, but this small block, what it does is it's just going to. I actually changed the location there. Yeah. So what it's going to do is it's going to go inside the reports folder. So that's where all the reports will get generated to. and it's going to say, it's going to tell code build to go and check, okay, there'll be reports generated in this folder, pull those out so and show it in a nice way so that so that I can see it, I can see what's happening in the tests in a more statistical way. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm mentioning that I'm using JUnit XML. Those are formats, you can look it up. For different tests, there are different formats. So that's what I'm doing there. So then I'm simply just adding that change what I just did. I'm committing it and I'm pushing it again. So once I push it again, the pipeline automatically starts building immediately. So it just pulled it now, and then it's going to start. And then when it goes to the build stage, the only difference here is that it's going to again run the test in the same way. But the difference here is at the end of the log, you'll see it's saying expanding reports.xml, found one file, report export. So it has found the report, right? It has found the report that the test report that I've just created. So the advantage here is that if it does this, code build gives another tab for reports. So if you open that, you will see what has happened there. See, it shows the report group. You can have multiple groups of reports if you want to run multiple tests. And if you open that group or if you open that test, it will show in a graphical way how many tests have passed, how many has failed, each test, how long it took, and you can see the log for them as well. So this is another nice cool touch that code build gives, where you can graphically see how your tests have run. You can see how much have failed, how much have passed. So that will instantly tell you when you're doing a deployment to, let's say, production or something, you will quickly know, okay, all of these are passing, so I don't need to worry, right? Instead of going inside each build, you can just come to this report in the build side menu. You will see there's a report group. So you can come to this report section, and even if you go one step above this, now this is for this particular test, right? So if you go to that entire report group, you will see what has happened for that entire. Now, if I had written 10, 15 tests here it will show a full summary of all those tests, like how many have passed, how many have failed, how long each of them took, and the pass rate, fail rate, and everything. So you get a full overview of what's happening, and it's pretty useful for people who do a lot of automation, and even if you have a lot of unit tests written in your application, and you want your pipeline to reflect what's happening, that's an easy way to do it. So I just wanted to add that there just to show you that is also possible, and that's a nice feature in code build. So yeah, that's the demo. Finally, I'm just ending it with this, where as a summary, what I've done here is I've used code commit, code build, and code pipeline and Elastic Beanstalk to so this is what's happening here. So to start to deploy my Node.js application directly to AWS without doing anything, like I didn't do anything to to create any servers or to do the load balancing and all those. I didn't do anything because Elastic Beanstalk is doing it for me. And the pipeline and the code build that I configured here. So this is the pipeline. So everything I configured here, it's going to do the CI/CD part, and Elastic Beanstalk is doing the automation part. So everything comes together to. So this shows like an introductory depth of what you can do with how you can achieve DevOps in AWS. So if you if I just run through the pricing, Elastic Beanstalk, it doesn't cost you anything. It's only whatever the services that you're doing using underneath, like the EC2, RDS, DynamoDB, whatever the application services that you're using underneath, that will cost. But this whole automation and these dashboards and the deployment strategies, all these advantages that it's giving, that is free of charge. There's no additional charge. Code commit, for the first 5 active users, it's free. For each additional user, you'll have to pay $1 per month, and there are certain limits for that as well. For code build, the instance type I chose for the demo was the cheapest one. So the cheapest, the 3 GB 2 CPU version, is for 100 build minutes per month. So the first 100 minutes of build time is free. free forever. So after that, it'll start costing based on the CPU type and the GPU type you chose. You can check that in these pricing sections. And finally, code pipeline is again, there is no upfront cost. It will cost $1 per active pipeline per month. But then again, one free active pipeline is there each month. So if you have just one pipeline, it's fully free. The more pipelines you add, $1 per pipeline will be added. So if you're going to start off, you don't have to worry too much about the cost. Especially if you're going to do serverless applications. Now I showed server based, like EC2 based, but you can easily add Lambda functions as serverless applications using the pipeline as well. The only difference is in the in the build stage, you'll have to change it a little. And in the deploy, you'll have to say you can use code deploy and tell it to deploy to Lambda rather than using Elastic Beanstalk. So that way, why I'm saying in this is if you are going to get started, it won't cost you anything, especially if you go to that Lambda route. It won't cost you anything at all. You can get started and you can see what's happening, and it's pretty much free. So yeah, that's how you can get started with DevOps in AWS, and that's the demo. So I took a little bit more time than I was allocated. So sorry for that, but thank you for sticking around. I see there's still 44 people, so that's great. Yeah, so that's it. If there's any questions, I can take it, or maybe then we can wrap up the sessions. Or you can always reach out to me in Twitter or LinkedIn, or Facebook. I'm active there as well. So you can just drop me a message, and if there's any doubts, I can I can help in any way I can. Not just DevOps related, any other AWS related things also. I think if I know, I will help you out definitely. So do follow me. My in Twitter and LinkedIn is Keshav Kumaresan. So if you don't want to bring it up here, you can always reach out to me there as well. So yeah, that's from me. That's it, I guess. If there's any questions, I can take it. Okay, so I think that's it. All right, then. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you for staying for all this time. Thank you for listening. I hope the session was useful. Do reach out to me anytime if you guys have anything. I'm be more than happy to help out. And do stick out for the next 2 sessions in AWS. No, I only covered CI/CD today. We will be covering a lot more on monitoring and logging as well. So do stick out for the following sessions. It should be pretty useful. So yeah, thank you so much, guys. Thank you. See you guys on the next one then.